Well, we have some listener reaction to the Rays announcing a new deal or a deal for a new stadium in St. Petersburg, plus some mailbag questions to dive into.
You know how much we love mailbag episodes, so let's get started right now.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, my name is Kevin Weiss.
I'm Ulises Sambrano.
And we are the host of the Locked On Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your very first listen every day. Be sure to check out and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Locked On Rays. You can also find us on the social medias and email us anytime. Voice memos preferred, lockedonrays@gmail.com. Well, we put a poll up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Are you happy to see the Rays remain in St. Petersburg? 80% of the respondents said yes, and 20% said no. First off, Ulises, were you surprised by the results of that poll?
No, because I know that the people that said no are the ones that really wanted Hillsborough County. Like a lot of us wanted Hillsborough County, but I think the people that said no is because they were really gung-ho about it being in Hillsborough County. So that's why they're not happy about it. It's not like they're like, oh, the team is staying? Bleep. It's not like that.
Yeah. I think it was Ken Hagen who just created a bunch of burner accounts and voted no repeatedly.
I need to hear the first recording by Ken Hagen, a first interview. We need to hear that because that's
somebody better go to him. If you're Mark Topkin, if you're Evan Klosky, if you're fill in the blank news reporter, you need to get some money quotes from Ken Hagen because he's always good for a couple of those for sure. In fact, I think he's thrown out a couple of salvos here already, but I'll digress from all that. We do have some comments from listeners out there on the stadium news. Brennan Mills says, can't stand everyone saying, quote, at least they're not leaving. A $1 billion plus project shouldn't start with, quote, at least. The Rays were never in danger of leaving the area. Montreal was a sham, and MLB wouldn't allow relocation with expansion on the horizon. Argenis Rashad says, don't want to get overexcited about it, but good news apart from the Rays playing good ball are more than welcome. Darby Robinson said, the Rays are not moving out of state or the area, and that is a good thing because for as much as we may differ about the locations, there was a very real possibility, almost certainty, if a deal wasn't reached in the next year or so, the Rays were going the way of the A's. MV Wall says, I wish it was in Tampa, but at least they are not leaving the state. Another couple people say, I wish it was in Tampa as well. Patrick Gold says, I think ignoring the massive problem of location and rebuilding in St. Pete all but guarantees that the team eventually leaves the region. Well, what does that mean? Like 30 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, 60 years from now? I mean, they're building a new stadium come 2028. I think they're going to be staying for a while. Hopefully, over the course of our lifetimes, more or less.
Stadium leases are usually for 30 years, so we're good for the next 30 years, Patrick.
Yeah, so you could say eventually every team is going to leave the region. Heck, I mean, what's going to happen in 2300?
The Dodgers left New York, didn't they? Or Brooklyn, so, you can do that. I saw this one. Our buddy, Austin Holloway, he says, in my opinion, I'm glad they didn't leave, that was in quotes, line I'm hearing from so many fans is coping. They were never going to leave. Central Florida is a baseball hotbed. And if they built an accessible stadium, it'd be plain to see. But yeah, let's make our diehards travel 2+ hours just to see a game.
Yeah, and we also heard some comments on it doesn't solve the attendance issue, and it doesn't. Although I hope that if you build up that area, that district in a Battery-esque fashion, that maybe naturally you get some bleed over from that. At the very end of the day, I mean, Stu Sternberg's going to be rich and happy regardless. I just hope that they take some of that money, some of those excess funds, and put it towards the infrastructure of the ball club and ensuring that you have a competitive team that can win the World Series, because we've seen the stat time and time again that in order to actually win a World Series, you pretty much have to have at least a payroll of $100 million. You can get there with a lot less, but if you're going to win the dang thing, you got to have some all-stars, you got to have some superstars, you got to have some veterans, you got to have some guys that can handle the heat of the moment, that have been there, done that. And how do you do that? You got to pay those guys, and you have to have an exploded payroll to some extent.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. Now, with inflation the way that it's going, the Rays might be touching 100 mil rather sooner than later. But then again, the bar raises from 100 mil. So yeah, I agree with you. I understand that that's the most important thing, but just like I said on Tuesday's episode, I am dying, and yes, that is hyperbole. I am dying to see what they're going to do with public transportation, with ferry options, with high rail systems in place, with more bridges being built. Whatever it is, you need more accessibility to the place that you have now 30 years of information that it's very difficult for people to get there.
And you're talking not about the team, but the city, the county, the state, and the federal government, what they're going to do to improve infrastructure there.
Yeah.
And those projects take a very, very, very long time and usually have some setbacks. Rome wasn't built in a day. Heck, sometimes it takes, 3 years to get a street light installed. I don't know.
So, does it?
Yeah, that's government for you. Yeah, and good thing, I mean, the county's from what I've heard, they're only going to use tourist tax dollars. So that's a good sign. It's not like, property tax money that's going towards it.
I understand that's more of a government thing, but I mean, the projects should have these possibilities in the project itself. Like, hey, in order to get more people, at least that's the way I'm thinking. Like, in order to sell this project, they had to say, but we are planning on the more accessibility, such as ferry options, such as hopefully a train system. We're talking to the government, the local government, expanding the tramway, like all of these things you would expect that they would be in place, for it to work better.
I think my camera has gone kaput.
It really has, because you are now a
there I am. I'm back.
Hey, you're back. That was
made
fun. I was like, do I keep going? Do I not keep going? That was fun.
Yeah, no, I was looking up some of the transportation reports that the Heinz company has promised. So there we go. Yeah, that's going to be an issue that is going to have to be sorted out one way or the other, because the egress and ingress is very important as to whether somebody makes that decision. Am I really going to go to a game on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night or a Thursday night rather than a Friday night or a Saturday night, whatever it may be? We have some mailbag questions to dive into. But first, we have to tell you this. The MLB playoffs are around the corner, which means the clock is ticking on your chance to 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball has never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Acuna, Betts, Ohtani, and heck, we can add Yandy Diaz and some others to the list. Pick more or less on stats for these stars like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and more for up to a 100 times payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right, and you could win BIG big. So use promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Again, Sleeper, it's a really, really cool fantasy app, and you should dive into it today and check out all that it has to offer. All right, let's get into these mailbag questions that have been put forward. This first one from Kevin says, guys, I was waiting for the egg on the face listening to the episode mentioning Rays trivia when I asked which 6 out of 19 Orioles hitters logged more than 5,000 plate appearances. I kept yelling at the screen, listening to the YouTube replay, saying Cal Ripken Jr. Ripken Jr., of course. For a mailbag question, though, do you believe that the Rays organization will bring up more pitchers to the roster and move the likes of Jonathan Aranda and other up-and-comers that did not produce to the level we expected, given their chances at the plate and on the field? I leave out Basabe because his glove and scrappiness at the plate makes me more excited to keep him rather than Aranda or Brujan going into October. If yes, then who? Enjoy the show. Keep giving us great insight in the organization and Raise up.
Well, you said Kevin?
Yes, it is signed Kevin at the end of the email.
Okay, well, Kevin, thank you for enjoying what we do, and hopefully you keep tuning in and you become an everydayer for us if you're not already an everydayer. Yep. I'm going to cheat a little bit, Kevin and Kevin, because I'm going to say, yes, they are going to bring more arms. I believe they're going to bring up Jalen Beeks, which they did.
Did that just come across the scroll there? You got the breaking news.
Chris Davinsky is optioned to Durham Bulls, and Jalen Beeks is going to be recalled. As you know, we're recording this on a Monday evening, so yes, I am cheating a little bit, Kevin, on your question. But I think that's exactly what's going to happen. This is a microcosm of what they're going to do. Depending on matchups, depending on how people are feeling, and all that. I think you're going to see a little bit more movement on the pitching side than on the position player side. I think the position player side, there are no more Tristan Gray moves to be made. I think the main cast is set. Everybody knows their part, and now it's just a matter of play these next 10 games. And when we next meet up with Evan Klosky, or maybe the time after that, we will have our traditional playoff roster draft, which is always a really fun thing that we do. And just cutting off the proverbial fat from the roster.
No, I think that's fair. I agree with all that. And going a step or two further, I think you'll see some of these players, maybe more than one that Kevin mentioned here, not be on the roster because they're traded for an arm or two. We could see some Kyle Manzardo for Aaron Savali-esque deals, some Alika Williams for Bob Stevenson-esque moves. I think they're going to have to deal some of their position players' strength or equity on the 40-man roster for pitching help, both in relief and the bullpen, whether it's Aranda, Brujan, Greg Jones, somebody else, another somebody else, because I know they're not on the 40-man roster yet, but they are knocking on the door between the likes of Junior Caminero and Carson Williams and others as well. And the Rays currently playing the Angels. I'm not saying you have to go out and get the next great superstar or Cy Young contender, but maybe those relievers that you tweak a thing or two and they get it sorted out. Or, the old, hey, there's a player that can give us 140 innings, put together a 4.5 ERA and a 1.4 whip, and that's what we're looking for. We're looking for one or more of those guys. And the Angels, for example, have those kinds of names that I'm sort of spotlighting a little bit, i.e. Reed Detmers, i.e. Griffin Canning, i.e. Patrick Sandoval. And maybe you can package up a couple of your position player prospects for players of that caliber, if you will.
Since we've done this podcast since June 2019, that has always been the motto for the off season is you're going to have to unload and repackage your upper level and sometimes lower level prospects and consolidate. Basically, just consolidate because there's a lot of depth. I think on the pitching side, we are now at the thinnest that we've ever been, especially in the upper levels. I mean, basically, it's Mason Montgomery's show right now.
That's it, really. If you look at AAA, I don't even know if some of those guys could really even be considered 4A players. I mean, they're AAA players. They're minor leaguers because I think didn't the Rays deal Evan McKendry as well? So that was
I don't know. Did they?
It's probably bad that we don't remember that. I felt like they traded him for something.
Maybe they did. I don't want to. I don't.
But your point stands correct. It's Mason Montgomery, and he's no sure thing either.
Yeah.
And it's who after that. I mean, you hope that Shane Baz can get back on track, but there's question marks with the injuries and beyond Tyler Glass now, Aaron Savali, Zach Eflin, Taj Bradley, and or maybe Zach Littell. Look, at the end of the day, you need more than 5 names in the starting rotation. And that's just not going to get it done. You need to have 8, 9, 10, 12.
If you don't know that, you haven't been watching Rays baseball for the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years straight, but especially this year. Also, yes, just to clarify things for the last 75 seconds for our listeners / watchers on YouTube, Evan McKendry was traded to the Milwaukee Brewers for, of course, Rays legend catcher Alex Jackson. So yes, it's Mason Montgomery. It's the Mason Montgomery show. So you're gonna have to consolidate, and that's what we're gonna have to be seeing.
Yeah, and also to Kevin's point about almost missing out and whiffing completely on Cal Ripken Jr. Inside baseball here, but Ulises was one of the Hall of Fame voters that did not vote for Cal Ripken Jr. A decade plus ago.
Yes.
He was not one of the 98.5%.
I was also one of the youngest ever BBWA members, of course. But hey, you know what? Kevin knows that it can be very tough when that little music comes on and you're in the hot spot. But hey, in the hot seat. But guess what? I did come through. I was, sometimes you're like Randy Rosarena. Okay, you come through in the end, but before you do with a slap hit the other way with 2 strikes, you're gonna whiff hard, and you're gonna whiff hard twice, and you're gonna look like a fool, but you're gonna come through. And that was me last Friday, so I hope you appreciated that, Kevin.
And speaking of looking like a fool, we need to get rid of this baseball tradition or whatever. It shouldn't even be called a tradition of Hall of Fame voters not voting for, not giving Cal Ripken unanimous support, not giving Derek Jeter or Nolan Ryan or Tony Gwynn or Hank Aaron unanimous support.
So silly. It's people with egos. That's just what that tells me. They didn't give him an interview. They once in 1987, that guy just turned his back on me.
Again, I think it's a case of the nerds that were pushed into lockers and were cast aside in high school and or college. They have a chance to,
stick it to the jocks,
punch up
to
the jocks. And that's the opportunity that they take. Because
shame.
Why else wouldn't you, give your vote to a 19-time All-Star in a 96 WAR player who played 3,000 games in one uniform in 21 seasons.
For bleep's sake, Ken Griffey Jr. was not unanimous. If you don't want to punch somebody, after hearing that, you are a Zen master.
Yes, that's fair. All right. Speaking of Zen masters, there's something called Jase Medical that I think is really, really important. That
it is important, Kevin. It is important because modern medical care and treatment are important, but our global supply chains can be fragile. Things like pandemics, which we've all lived through, natural disasters, and foreign travel may cut you off from the treatment that you need. But in those times, Jase Medical is your solution. You can just fill out their online form, and one of Jase Medical's board-certified physicians will review it to determine whether medications are safe and appropriate. Then Jase will send your prescriptions to one of their partner pharmacies, where your order will be filled and mailed directly to your home. You can also send your physician a message for answers to treatment-related questions at any time. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using our code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com.
Okay, this next mailbag question from our buddy Charles McGregor. He says, hey, fellas, after seeing this weekend's series, I'm curious about your thoughts on how the order of the rotation should go up if we match up with the Orioles in the postseason. In any other series, Glasnow would probably start game one, but the Orioles seem like they're really good at hitting fastballs and struggled against some of the breaking pitches that Eflin and Savali threw. Knowing this, how would you set up the rotation for a series against Baltimore?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Yes.
That is a really good question. Charles McGregor, thank you so much for writing to us and for being a participant in our fantasy baseball league, by the way.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool. Man, I feel like I'm going to attack this the opposite way, because if you're playing the Orioles, you will not have home field advantage. You won't have it.
Right.
So if I attack it that way, I think I would have to say for game 3 of the ALDS, which would be played at the Trop, I'd have to go Zach Eflin. Eflin because he has just been so much more efficient. 11-4 record at home, only 4-4. Basically, just a more dominant pitcher. Whilst at home, I have to have him at the Trop, so that leaves me Tyler Glasnow and Savale for 1 or 2. I know he got hit hard, but Tyler Glasnow has the nastiest stuff. You can't just not.
He makes a statement when you roll him out for game number 1.
So Glasnow, I would the curveball in this case would be Savali number 2, and then I would have Zach Eflin at his best at home for game 3.
And I'm glad you brought that up. Unless you're 2018 Blake Snell, you're going to have a bad outing or two. There's some days where you're just not going to be at your best. And unfortunately, we saw that for Tyler Glasnow because he had been very, very, very good up to that point. And he was just having some command and control issues. And I think the fastball velocity wasn't quite up to par as we're used to. So you add in not really able to locate it as he would. And maybe it's just a case of the pitch mixing too. I know there was a sequence where he threw 4 straight fastballs to Gunnar Henderson, and a player, even though he's young, as good as Gunnar Henderson is right now, you throw a guy 4 straight fastballs, he's eventually going to be able to catch up to it. So I think it goes beyond, look, Eflin and Savali, we saw the breaking stuff play, but Tyler Glasnow is a pretty dang good curveball. And it wasn't just, look, the Orioles are a good fastball hitting team, but Glasnow's slider cutter, slutter, whatever you want to call it, also got beaten up a little bit. So maybe it's just going back to the well and thinking, how can we approach and pitch the Orioles differently? And maybe I was at, if I'm Glass now, maybe I was at 80%, 85% instead of 95, 98%.
I want to kind of edit what I said on Eflin. If I'm reading this correctly, it's pretty even, except for the strikeouts.
Okay.
The strikeout rate is incredibly more impressive at home than away. Everything else is kind of the same. So, but still, I would still rather have Eflin at home. I feel like, the whole, I'm going with the personal now. I'm going with the human level.
Right.
Dude is a Rays fan from childhood, diehard Rays fan, as he said to Trisha Whitaker during the weekend series. Family members are there. I think that's just the extra where spreadsheets and stats don't tell the whole story. So I would still go Zach Eflin game 3 for the ALDS.
And I know it wasn't like a huge, I guess it shifted the momentum in some shape or form, but Randy dropping that ball in the game that Glasnow started, that normally he catches that ball, that's upsetting if you're a pitcher, and that can change the complexion of things. So I think it was a combination of factors. I every once in a while, a guy is going to get lit up. And frankly speaking, if you're going to pay this man $25 million next season, you better be confident and willing to roll him out as your number one if Shane McClanahan isn't healthy, if Jeffrey Springs isn't healthy, if Drew Rasmussen isn't healthy. Having said that, I would not be opposed to seeing, Zach Eflin and his, 150 career game starts and his Charlie Morton-esque demeanor and ambiance, get that opportunity, get that, hey, you've earned it. You've done so much for us this season. You do have the largest free agent contract in franchise history. So there could be a conversation or a point to be made for Eflin as well. But I wouldn't, use this opportunity to say that we should be afraid to roll Glasnow out against the Orioles.
Can I play off what you just said on the simile between Eflin and Charlie Morton, which, by the way, tremendous. But if we go to 2019, did Charlie Morton start game 1? No. Did Charlie Morton start game 2? No. He was the stopper. When the Rays were down 0-2, he started game 3 at the Trop and gave them that W. I agree with you that Zach Eflin does give Charlie Morton vibes, just maybe 7 years younger than Charlie was, but still with that demeanor. That's why Zach Eflin should be game 3.
And he comes off as a guy that would not be slighted by, why am I pitching game 3 versus game 2 or game 1? Like, hey, put me in whatever situation you think is best for the team at the end of the day. Exactly. I think that's Zach Eflin in a nutshell, and I think that could work out swimmingly for this organization too.
And he showed it not only this year, but he showed it last year with the Phillies. They moved him to the bullpen, and he's like, "I'm in. Let's go. Give me the ball whenever you need to. I'm there. I'm there."
Yeah. So I think Glasnow gets things situated. He's too good of a pitcher, has too nasty of stuff not to be effective, even against a team as good as the Orioles. Just hiccups happen.
Yeah.
Shane McClanahan, every pitcher.
What are the odds, Kevin, that it would happen twice in a row for Tyler Glasnow?
Yeah. If anything, it's a learning experience and kind of a go back to the drawing board and go back to the tape and say, how did I get beat up by the Orioles? What am I going to do to prevent that from happening this time around? Now, on the other course, not to go too deep into this, but if you allowed Zach Eflin to get the role or Aaron Savali to get the role first, and then maybe they can impart some wisdom and guidance, and Glasnow can learn from them if they're effective or maybe ineffective. in game 1 and or game 2. But I think at the end of the day, you shouldn't be shy about rolling out Glass. Now, again, you're going to pay this guy $25 million next season. If he's got 2 working fingers, you still got to pitch him. You still got to roll him out there.
Yeah. And again, the trust of the stuff is there, and the diligent and the work ethic is there. So I agree with you. You would have to start him. Now, we did, Kevin, we did have a third mailbag question planned by Eric Lekic. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, you think Eric Lekic?
I think that's about as close as you or I can get.
Okay, Eric, we loved your question. Your question was about the no intentional walk to bring up the Cano against the Orioles. We thought that was a tremendous question, a tremendous email, but we have just run out of time. So guess what, Kevin? Do you think it should be maybe postponed, and maybe we can have this conversation with Evan Klosky when we have him this week?
Yeah, that sounds good. I think we have a lot to talk about with Evan Klosky between the stadium news, between this question, other developments that are going on in the midst of football season as well, too. So it should be a fun episode, or multiple episodes with Evan Klosky. Yes,
that's right.
All right. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Stay safe, and we will talk to you tomorrow.